Have you ever been in a conversation, maybe arguing about something, and suddenly you just feel this cold wave, like you're being completely dismissed?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling of just being invalidated.
Yeah, exactly. Or maybe you've done it yourself. Use a little shrug or a scoff
Yeah.
to just sort of brush off something uncomfortable someone said.
We probably all have at some point.
Well, today we're going to pull back the curtain on that, on this habit. It's often pretty unconscious, I think, to
Right.
show what it really is. It's like a hidden shield, right? A way to dodge things.
That's a good way to put it. A shield.
Our topic for this deep dive is contempt, the shield against responsibility. We're really going to explore it not just as like a random feeling.
Right. Not just an emotion that pops up.
Yeah, but as a tool, something people actually use, maybe without realizing it, to avoid being accountable.
And for this deep dive, we're drawing on insights from a really great piece called, funnily enough, Contempt, the Shield Against Responsibility. It does a fantastic job dissecting this whole dynamic.
So our mission today, we want to unpack how contempt works. Why it pops up so often when things get emotional.
Especially in tense situations.
And what it does long term. That slow, kind of corrosive thing it does to trust and, well, to our own growth. You'll leave this deep dive, hopefully, really understanding this subtle but, wow, powerful dynamic.
Yeah, it shapes so much.
Okay, so let's unpack this. We throw the word contempt around. But what is it exactly? Is it just being really angry?
That's a great question. It's more complex than just anger. At its core, it's this potent mix. You've got anger in there, sure, but also disgust. And crucially, a real sense of superiority.
Superiority.
Yeah. And unlike, say, pure rage, which can be hot and explosive, contempt is, well, it's cold. It's dismissive. It cuts you down, and it carries this judgment like the other person is somehow beneath you, less worthy.
I can picture that immediately, the eye roll,
Yeah.
that little sigh.
Exactly. Those are classic signs. It shows up in, so many ways, often subtle but really impactful, like verbal sarcasm.
Right.
That scoffing tone of voice, waving a hand dismissively, rolling your eyes, even just using silence, but like strategically,
Right, that loaded silence.
It's not just saying I disagree. It's saying I have disdain for you or for what you're saying. Psychologically, it often functions as a defense mechanism, a way to put distance between yourself and something that feels like an emotional threat.
So the message is kind of like,
The underlying message is basically, you can't touch me. I refuse to be affected by you or your feelings. I'm above this. I'm above you.
wow, okay, that's a really powerful distinction. So if contempt is this, like deflector shield, it makes you wonder, what's it protecting us from? And what's the real cost compared to just, facing up to things?
That's the core of it, isn't it?
Yeah. So how does contempt work specifically as that shield against responsibility?
Well, it's absolutely key for avoiding ownership. Instead of admitting you made a mistake or acknowledging you hurt someone or even just showing a bit of vulnerability,
Right.
someone might just default to contempt. Why? Because it instantly shifts the power dynamic. Suddenly, they're the one in control looking down on the other person.
Ah,
It completely bypasses any need to look inward, Blame goes outward, pressure to change, gone. It's a quick fix, essentially. A destructive one, but quick.
you see that everywhere, don't you? Like, take a work example. A manager messes up, misses a big deadline. A colleague comes over, maybe genuinely concerned. And instead of owning it, the manager snaps, "Ooh, you're always so dramatic about everything." What's actually happening there? Psychologically. How's that comment a shield?
Well, it does two things immediately. One, it totally invalidates the colleague's concern, right? It makes it seem unreasonable.
Yeah.
And two, it completely deflects attention away from the real issue, the manager's failure. But what's really insidious, as the source material points out, is this illusion of superiority it gives the
The
manager.
notion of superiority.
Yeah, it makes the person using contempt feel immune. Immune to consequences, immune to being wrong, immune to needing anything from anyone. This is particularly attractive maybe for people with kind of fragile self-esteem or maybe unresolved shame.
Because they don't have to face it.
Exactly. They never have to utter the words, I was wrong or I hurt you, because the contempt puts them on a pedestal way above all that messy stuff. It's a serious cognitive distortion, really. It actively stops them from building real resilience.
And it's not just at work, obviously. Like in a relationship, partner gets called out for maybe being emotionally distant,
A common one.
and they shoot back, "Oh, great, so now I'm the villain." That kind of sarcastic deflection It just flips the whole script, doesn't it?
It absolutely flips the script. It turns a request for connection or accountability into this accusation of exaggerated blame. So the person using contempt gets to feel morally superior, indignant even, instead of having to look at their own behavior. You see, responsibility. It takes work. Emotional labor, right? You have to reflect, own up, try to repair things. It can be uncomfortable.
Definitely.
Contempt, all it demands is withdrawal and attack. It feels easier, faster, maybe gives us the illusion that the problem's been dealt with, but it prevents any real work from happening. It's a dead-end street.
Yeah, it reminds me of like a parent who maybe yells because they're stressed.
Okay.
And later, instead of saying sorry or explaining, they just mutter something like, ugh, kids these days are just too soft.
Classic deflection.
It just instantly puts distance there, doesn't it? It avoids their own emotional accountability by basically belittling the child's feelings.
Blame shifted. Done.
Precisely. Externalized immediately.
So, okay, it's clearly destructive. Why? Why do people reach for this shield? What are the sort of psychological payoffs? What needs does it meet for them, even if badly?
Well, the sources point to a few key functions. Firstly, there's emotional protection. It shields you from feeling guilt or regret or vulnerability, things that can feel pretty bad. Right. Avoid the uncomfortable feelings.
Exactly. Secondly, it gives a sense of control. You establish dominance. You shut the other person down. That can feel powerful, especially if you're feeling powerless underneath.
Right.
Thirdly, it can be a form of projection, where you kind of dump your own unwanted feelings or traits onto someone else. Contempt helps offload that internal discomfort.
Like, you're the one who's messed up, not me.
Basically, yeah. And fundamentally, it's about avoidance. Avoiding real talk, avoiding repair, avoiding change. And what's really interesting is how it can become, totally habitual.
Just a default response.
Yeah, a go-to move. Often learned, maybe in families, maybe culturally, especially where being emotionally open is sort of seen as weak.
That makes sense. But even though it gives that quick, short-term win of avoiding responsibility, the long-term cost must be huge.
Oh, the costs are profound. And they really stack up over time.
The kind of costs we're talking about.
Well, first off, there's the erosion of trust. Contempt basically screams, you're not worthy of respect. How can you trust someone who signals that?
You can't.
You can't.
Right.
Totally
Then there's
cannot.
emotional isolation. It might protect the ego, sure, but it destroys intimacy. You push people away. It also stunts your own personal growth. If you're constantly avoiding accountability, you're avoiding self-awareness. You just don't learn or evolve.
You stay stuck.
Exactly. And it reinforces the cycle. The more you use it, the easier it becomes, the harder it is to connect authentically. What's really insidious here is that using contempt, which feels like a quick escape,
I got one
actually
more to
trains
do.
your brain to always seek that easy
That'll be
way
the
out
last
from
of these.
discomfort. So real introspection starts to feel, well, almost impossible after a while.
Can you give an example? Like in a friendship.
Sure. Imagine a friendship where one person consistently mocks the other's feelings or needs, laughs them off, calls them ridiculous or too sensitive. Over time, what happens? The person being mocked just withdraws, they stop sharing, they pull back, and the friendship, it just withers away, dies on the vine, basically.
That's really sad and kind of unsettling when you think about how widespread this pattern might be. It's not just like a personal flaw, is it? It seems like it shows up in bigger systems too in our culture.
That's a really important point. It absolutely scales up. Think about workplaces, for instance.
How does it show up there?
Well, you might see leadership using contempt to shut down criticism or dissent. Instead of addressing, say, valid complaints about workload or conditions, they might label the workers as lazy or entitled or overly sensitive.
Right, dismiss the messenger.
Precisely. Or in politics, we see it constantly, mockery directed at certain groups, especially marginalized ones. It's a way to avoid actually debating policy or taking responsibility for impact. Just reduce their concerns to whining.
Yeah, you hear that rhetoric.
And even in media commentary, contempt gets weaponized all the time, turning serious issues into sound bites, using sarcasm to score points instead of discussing real consequences. It kind of teaches us that the loudest scoffer wins and accountability just sort of evaporates.
That's a bleak picture. And it makes you think, how does this pattern play out closer to home?
Cool.
In our intimate relationships, even how we're raised?
Yeah, it manifests differently depending on the context, but the damage is always there. Let's take contempt and gender, for example.
Okay.
In some cultural contexts, men might be socialized to express emotional disconnect through things like minimizing jokes, eye rolls, or just silence. And if their partner calls them out on it,
They might get defensive.
exactly, they might lash out, accusing the partner of being crazy or hysterical or too sensitive. It's a classic contempt tactic to dodge accountability and avoid feeling vulnerable themselves.
And what about women? Does it look different?
It can, yeah. Women might internalize contempt differently. Maybe turning it inward, blaming themselves, minimizing their own pain. Or they might use more passive forms, like sharp sarcasm that masks deep hurt or unmet needs. But in both cases, right, it's a cover, a shield against raw, difficult emotions.
Thinking about kids, contempt in parenting and education, that feels particularly worrying. Children learn so quickly, don't they?
They absolutely do. And they learn to silence their own emotions really fast if they're met with contempt. Think about a teacher who says to a kid who's struggling, "You're just not trying hard enough."
Oof.
Yeah.
What message
That's
does that
funny.
send? It says, your struggle is invalid, your feelings don't matter, there's something wrong with you.
So damaging.
In families where parents regularly mock or belittle their kids, it creates this deep emotional insecurity. It can follow them right into adulthood, leading to adults who maybe repress emotions, struggle with conflict, find intimacy really difficult.
Which ties right into maybe the most devastating area. Contempt in romantic relationships. You mentioned John Gottman's research before.
Yes, his work is foundational here.
He found contempt is the #1 predictor of divorce.
Yeah.
It's huge. Why is it so uniquely toxic in a romantic partnership?
It's because it strikes at the very heart of the relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Respect and safety. When sarcasm, eye rolling, name calling, dismissive laughter, when those things replace genuine dialogue
The foundation cracks.
completely, the relationship starts to rot from the inside out. Often, the person using contempt is actually defending against their own deep feelings, maybe inadequacy, maybe fear of being abandoned. But instead of saying, "I feel scared" or "I feel hurt,"
They attack.
they attack, they scoff, they withdraw. It's cumulative damage. Trust disappears. That feeling of safety, gone. And love, well, love just can't thrive in an environment where basic respect is constantly undermined. It's like a slow poison.
Okay, this has been pretty heavy, actually, exploring all this. So, what does it all mean for us listening right now? How can we start to break free from this pattern, whether we're the one dishing it out or the one receiving it?
It is heavy, but awareness is the first step, right? And the most crucial thing, I think, is to start recognizing contempt for what it is. It's a defense. It's not just who someone is. It's a strategy, however flawed.
So, not a fixed personality trait.
Exactly. And that means we can start asking ourselves some tough questions. Like, if I catch myself being dismissive or mocking, what am I actually avoiding right now? What feeling am I trying not to feel? What would it really mean if I admitted I caused harm here? Can I just sit with the discomfort of maybe being wrong instead of immediately lashing out or shutting down? It takes courage to feel the things contempt tries to bury.
Right. And once you start recognizing it, what then? What are the actual practices for cultivating responsibility instead?
It comes down to conscious choices. Things like pausing before reacting, especially when you feel that defensive urge rise up.
Taking a breath.
Yeah, literally taking a breath, trying to reflect what's really going on for me
Yeah.
instead of just deflecting blame. And crucially, learning to apologize sincerely when you have caused harm.
A real apology, not a sorry you feel that way kind of thing.
Exactly, a genuine apology. And being willing to engage in honest dialogue, even when it feels awkward or vulnerable or just plain uncomfortable.
That takes practice.
It absolutely does. And underpinning all of that is the need to actively cultivate empathy. You see, contempt and empathy, they fundamentally can't coexist.
Why is that?
Because contempt relies on seeing the other person as less than, as fundamentally different or flawed. Empathy is about recognizing shared humanity. When you genuinely try to see the world from their perspective, understand their feelings as valid, even if you don't agree, that feeling of superiority just melts away. Disdain can't survive real understanding. Connection becomes possible again.
So empathy is kind of the antidote.
It really is. It's the bridge back from contempt to connection.
Okay, so just to kind of wrap this up, to reiterate what we've uncovered here, contempt isn't a sign of being strong or smart or witty.
Not at all.
It's a mask. It's that shield we talked about. Something worn to push away responsibility, to avoid feeling vulnerable. It might offer a quick feeling of protection,
Very short term.
but the long-term damage is immense. It just eats away at trust, at intimacy, at our own potential for growth.
I'm connecting this back to the bigger picture, you know? Real maturity, genuine connection, lasting peace, they don't come from building walls and distancing ourselves. They come from owning our stuff, our words, our actions, and the real impact they have on the people around us.
It's like living without contempt isn't about being weak. It's actually about being incredibly courageous. Courageous enough to face ourselves honestly, imperfections and all.
Beautifully put, because when responsibility steps in where contempt used to be, relationships have a chance to heal. When we choose accountability over sarcasm, dignity gets restored, both ours and theirs. And when we finally stop shielding ourselves from discomfort, that's when we actually finally begin to grow.
Yay! It's the last time.